Welcome to our deep dive. This time, it's all about the world of social media. And wow, you've given us a lot to work with. Articles, research,
Yeah.
even a whole transcript from a YouTube panel discussion.
Yeah.
You really went all out.
Yeah. It's impressive. I feel like we're about to go on an archaeological dig, but for the digital world, to uncover how social media really works, not just what we see on the
I
surface.
like that digital dig. And speaking of digging deeper, in that YouTube discussion, something that really jumped out at me was the whole psychology of likes.
Oh, yeah. That was fascinating.
They talked about how when we get those likes and comments, our brains actually release dopamine, like a reward system.
It's like our brains haven't fully caught up with technology, right? Like back in the day, that dopamine rush would push our ancestors to hunt for food. Now it's pushing us to check our notifications.
Exactly. It's like our
Yeah.
brains are wired to crave that validation. But the experts were saying it's gone way beyond just connecting with friends and family now.
Yeah, it's more about building an online persona now, like presenting this idealized version of ourselves.
Totally. Remember the early days of social media? Like Orkut. It was all about anonymity. You'd pick a quirky username and just be yourself. No pressure to show your real life.
Oh, yeah, Orkut. I was obsessed with decorating my profile with those glittery GIFs.
Me too. But then came Facebook, and everything changed. Suddenly, it was all about real names, real photos, everything linked to your offline life.
Right, like Facebook was pushing for a more authentic experience, but the experts were debating, is that actually a good thing? Did it actually make people more genuine online, or did it just create this different kind of performance where we're all trying to project this perfect image?
Yeah. It's like before, on the internet, nobody knew you were a dog. But now, everyone knows you're a dog, and they expect you to have the perfect Instagram-worthy life.
Exactly. And that kind of pressure can be exhausting, right? Maybe that's why Facebook's losing its grip on younger people. They're flocking to platforms like TikTok, where it's less about being perfect and more about expressing yourself, even if it's messy.
It's true. And speaking of TikTok, that's another thing the experts were really fascinated by, how this platform has totally changed the game. Like, it's not a search-driven platform the way YouTube is.
Yeah, it's all about their algorithm. It's constantly learning what you like and then basically predicts what you'll want to see next, even before you know it yourself.
It's wild. One of the experts even mentioned that people in China are spending like an average of 100 minutes a day on short-form video apps.
Hmm.
And TikTok's Chinese counterpart, Douyin. It's huge over there.
It's mind-blowing, right? And what I find really interesting is how TikTok has democratized content creation. You don't need fancy equipment or anything. Anyone with a smartphone can potentially go viral.
Right. It's like anyone could be a rock star now.
Yeah.
I'm curious, have you ever been tempted to make your own TikToks?
Hmm. I've thought about it, but I don't know. I guess I get a bit self-conscious.
Oh, totally. I get that. It's that feeling of putting yourself out there and wondering if people will actually care.
Yeah, exactly. But, the experts did emphasize that at its core, social media should be about connection. It's about sharing your voice with the world, regardless of how many likes you get.
That's a great point. So maybe the real question isn't whether to create content, but rather what kind of impact we want to have with it. But before we go down that road, we should probably talk about something else the experts brought up, the downsides.
Right, yeah. They had a pretty intense discussion about social media and mental health, especially among young people.
They talked about how all that comparison and competition can be really harmful.
Yeah.
It can make you feel inadequate no matter how old you are.
Yeah, like everyone else is living these perfect lives and you're the only one struggling. They even talked about this new term, cloud farming, where people try to get attention by being negative and attacking those with more followers.
Oh, wow, I haven't heard that one. It's like they're trying to build themselves up by tearing others down.
Exactly. It shows how envy and negativity can really thrive online. It can make you want to just delete all your accounts and go live in a cabin in the woods.
Right. But before we go full hermit mode, let's try to end on a more positive note. The experts did have some more optimistic predictions about the future.
They did. They were talking about how people are starting to wake up to the downsides of social media. Like we're becoming more aware, more demanding of change.
They even mentioned a social media revolution where we move away from platforms that just want to make money off of us. Maybe platforms that prioritize our well-being and actually help us connect in meaningful ways.
Yeah. Like Be Real, they mentioned that one. It encourages more authentic posts, like
Yeah.
just snapshots of your everyday life.
That's really interesting. But even if we move away from all the filters and perfectly curated posts, there's still the issue of privacy and data collection. Like, one of the experts shared this crazy story about how he was talking about a hotel with a friend on WhatsApp. It's supposed to be private, right? And then he saw an ad for that exact hotel on Facebook.
Whoa, that's creepy.
Right. It makes you wonder if we can ever truly escape that feeling of being watched.
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about. And actually, that's a perfect segue into what we'll be talking about in the next part of our deep dive. The business models of social media, the ethical implications of all this data collection, and what, if anything, we can do to protect our privacy.
That's a must listen for sure. Stay tuned for the next part of our deep dive into the world of social media.
Welcome back to our social media deep dive. Last time we were talking about data collection and privacy, and it can be kind of unsettling, but I do think there are ways we can take back some control.
For sure. I'm all ears. But first, let's circle back to something else the experts talked about, how social media isn't just impacting us as users, but also the creators.
Right. It's this interesting blur between performer and audience. We're all kind of both at the same time creating and consuming.
And one comedian even compared those early days of Twitter to doing stand-up. He was totally hooked on that feedback loop, the instant likes, retweets.
Yeah, it is like a drug, isn't it? That validation. And the platforms know how to keep us hooked.
The experts talked about how some creators specifically try to maximize that engagement, like focusing on whatever's trending, whether it's like a news story or a meme.
Smart, but it does make you wonder, right? Are they being genuine or just chasing those clicks?
Exactly. And then there's what they called contrarian opinions. Like if everyone's saying one thing and you take the opposite stance.
Oh, yeah. That can definitely get you noticed. But one expert pointed out it can get toxic too. Social media loves strong emotions, positive or are negative. So your contrarian take might start a good debate, but it could also just turn into a shouting match.
Negativity sells.
Yeah.
Right. So thinking about us as users, how do we even navigate this? Everyone's trying to grab our attention, sometimes in not so great ways.
The experts had some good advice there. First, just be aware of how the algorithms work, recognizing those tactics creators use. It's about being a bit skeptical, not just believing everything you see.
Like we need to be smarter media consumers, basically.
Totally. Critical thinking is key. Question your own biases, look for different viewpoints, and I think most importantly, remember, social media is not the whole picture. It's easy to get caught up in everyone's highlight reel, but there's a whole offline world out there.
Very true. So how do we find that balance? Enjoy the good parts, connection, entertainment, information, without getting sucked into the bad.
Well, a few practical tips. First, curate your feeds. Be mindful of who you follow. If someone's always making you feel bad, envious, maybe unfollow or mute them.
Oof, yeah. Guilty of that myself. Time for a little digital detox, maybe.
It can be a relief. Second tip, boundaries. Social media is designed to be addictive, so set limits. Maybe certain times you check or turn off those notifications. Resist that temptation to always be on your phone.
Good advice.
And lastly, remember, it's just a tool. Can be used for good or are bad. So before you post, what's your motivation? Are you genuinely trying to connect or just looking for validation, attention?
Good questions to ask ourselves.
Yeah, if you're always chasing those likes, maybe you need to find some self-worth, happiness outside of social media.
Makes sense. So we've covered a lot. Psychology, creator strategies, the downsides. But what about the big elephant in the room? That whole data collection privacy thing we talked about earlier.
Ah, yes. That's where things get really interesting. Next time, we'll dive into how these platforms are actually making money off our data, the ethics of it all, and what we can do to protect ourselves in this increasingly digital world.
Sounds a little ominous, but I'm ready. Stay tuned, everyone. All right, welcome back to our social media deep dive. So it's time to talk about the big question. How do these platforms actually make money? We all know it's not from those cute cat videos, right?
Right. Those are just the hook. The real moneymaker is us, the users, or more specifically, our data. Every like, click, comment, even what we search for, it's all being tracked.
It's like those grocery store loyalty cards, but instead of saving a few bucks on groceries,
Yeah.
we're giving away these insights into our habits, preferences, even our emotions.
Exactly. And that data, it's gold to advertisers. They want to target us with those personalized ads. That's why, you might be browsing for shoes online and suddenly, bam, shoe ads everywhere.
All the time. It is pretty freaky how accurate they can be, but it makes you think.
Yeah.
Is this ethical? Are they allowed to just collect and profit from our data like that without really asking?
Yeah, the experts wrestled with that too. And it's not just about those targeted ads. That data can be used to sway our opinions, change our behavior, even predict what we'll do next.
That's getting into like sci-fi territory. If they know so much about us, could they actually control us?
It's a valid concern. And while we're not quite there yet, the potential's there. The experts talked about how, that data could be used to target us with very specific messages, playing on our fears or insecurities.
That's unsettling. So is there any way to protect ourselves in this data-driven world?
The experts had some ideas. First, just being aware of how our data is being collected, used. Reading those privacy policies, even though they're like a million pages long.
Ugh, yeah, the fine print. We should all do that more often.
For sure. Second, using tools that help protect your privacy. Ad blockers, VPNs. Those can limit how much data is scooped up.
Oh, yeah. VPNs. I've been meaning to set one up.
I get it. It can seem like a lot, but every little bit helps. And last tip, supporting laws that protect our privacy, our data rights. We need to hold these companies accountable. Demand more transparency.
So it sounds like we can't just be passive about it. We have to actually push for change.
Exactly. And speaking of change, the experts also talked about the future of social media, what it might look like. They think new platforms could pop up, ones that prioritize privacy, genuine connections, not just profits.
Now, that would be refreshing. It does feel like we're at a turning point, like we have a choice in what direction this all goes.
We do. It's hard to predict the future, but there are signs things are shifting. People are more aware of the downsides and demanding better.
Like a movement towards more mindful social media use. It's a tool, after all, right? We can choose how to use it.
That's a great way to put it. So as we wrap up our deep dive, what do you hope our listener takes away from all this?
Good question, I guess. Remembering that social media is a reflection of us. It shows the good and the bad. So let's try to use it for connection, creativity, not for division, manipulation.
Beautifully said. So, listeners, we'll leave you with this. What kind of digital world do you want to create? Thanks for joining us on our social media deep dive. Stay curious, stay critical, and stay connected.